Story 1. Ghost Ship. My boyfriend used to work for a company near the waterfront. Sometimes he had to work so late that it was after midnight when he would start home. Now, this happened one of those nights. After he finished working, he had about 45 minutes till his bus home. So he decided to take a walk along the waterfront. It was one of those cold October days here in Seattle. He was walking by the marina, watching all those boats and ships rocking on the water, and one ship in particular caught his attention. It was an old, rickety ship that didn't look like it could function anymore. The strangest thing about it was that it had a gangplank and an opening so that practically anyone could just walk on in. So, being curious as he was, he decided to go in and check it out. The ship had nothing on it. No furniture, no electronics, no controls to guide it. It didn't even have a wheel to steer it. It was dark and spooky. The floors were squeaky, almost like they were ready to break under his weight. The whole place was giving him major creeps. It obviously stayed there for a long, long time, since there was no way that the ship could move an inch without practically falling apart in the water. He walked into some sort of room. The room looked empty except for an old chair in the middle of it. He sat on the chair and lit up a cigarette, and then, out of nowhere, he started to hear the sounds of someone breathing. He also heard some movement that scared the crap out of him. He stood up from the chair, saw something in the shadows move. He started to walk towards the door out. All of a sudden, that door got blocked by a large figure of a man, dressed in really old clothing. "What are you doing here?" the man asked in a booming voice. "And why are you here? Are you a cop?" "No," my boyfriend answered. The big man didn't say anything, just stared back at him with an emotionless stare of someone who was extremely tired. My boyfriend heard some movement at the back of the room, so he turned around and saw a woman and 2 young children. My boyfriend assumed by this that it must be a family that was living on this old rickety boat. So he pulled $20 from his wallet, handed it to the man, and rushed quickly off the ship. As he was heading back to his bus stop, 2 cops stopped him and asked what he was doing on that boat. He said that he was just looking around, but the cops seemed really suspicious. They kept asking him more specific questions. My boyfriend finally told him that he saw a family down there, and the cops got really surprised and took him back to the ship with them to look for the family. The cops had stopped him just mere feet from the gangplank, and that was the only entrance and exit to the ship. When they climbed up on the ship, there was nobody there. There was no place to hide, and other than jumping into the freezing cold water, there was no way off the ship without being seen. The only thing they found was the $20 that he had gave that old man lying on the floor. Needless to say, my boyfriend had some explanations to do with the cops to make sure he was all right to go home. The next morning when my boyfriend went back to work, he went by that place. All the boats were in their place, except for that one. He never saw that one again. Story 2. The Lady with the Umbrella. We moved into an older house. One night my wife woke up in the middle of the night and saw a figure of a heavy-set woman, too large to be Mary Poppins, dressed in dark clothing, holding an umbrella, standing near our bed. My wife watched this figure for quite a while, and then just drifted back to sleep. She said at the time that she didn't feel concerned about the ghost's presence in our room, and since our city gets a lot of rain, the umbrella seemed very appropriate. We speculated that perhaps she was a neighborhood ghost, checking out the new people who had just moved into the house. Another time, when my wife was pregnant, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought I saw my wife sitting up on the edge of the bed. When I looked more closely, I realized that my wife was asleep, lying flat in the bed. There was a young woman with long hair, wearing a light-colored clothing, sitting on top of where the baby's bump was. I watched for a long time, and then said something to the effect of, "Well, will you look at that?" At that point, the apparition just disappeared in front of my face. I think it might have been our son's guardian angel. Story 3. The Pub Ghost. This story actually happened to a friend of mine. When she was a young girl, maybe 10, her parents moved into a house that was over top a working pub. Right from the start, when they moved in, she had bad feelings about this place. She told her parents as much, and her dad wasn't the sort to believe in these things, and put it down to just a childhood imagination. The pub itself was a large 2-story building, dating to the mid-1800s. The family lived on the first floor, and the pub area was on the ground floor. The cellar housed the extensive beer collection. She always felt that there was something bad in the pub, like there was a presence that wasn't too happy. They had lived there for about 2 months. She kept her worries to herself. She didn't want to tell her mom or dad again and have them not believe her. Her dad used to have her help out in the pub, getting bottles and chips and things like that from the cellar. She said she was never comfortable doing that. During this time, she also noticed that the door to the cellar would open in the mornings when she came down for breakfast. She started to note that at night it was always closed, and the next morning it would be open. Her parents also started arguing more and more during this period, and her dad would often ignore her. He accused her of stealing chips and drink from the cellar because the door was always open in the morning. Because of this, he got a padlock for the door. The first night the door was padlocked, it was open again in the morning. She couldn't have opened it because she had no idea where the key was. Her parents insisted that it wasn't them. This was around the time that she started to get really spooked about the cellar and made a concerted effort to avoid it. She told me that she felt the presence was a bad thing. She became more and more agitated by it and eventually told her mom. Her mom now admitted that she felt uncomfortable in the house, particularly in the cellar. They both decided to go to the local library and investigate the history of the house. They discovered that around the turn of the century, a landlord of the pub had killed his wife in the cellar, hung her up from a large meat hook that was still in the roof beam. She said this explained the feelings of low down the cellar, but also high up, that she always felt. It was confusing, but those were the emotions that she got from it. About 2 months after she found out this, her parents divorced because they argued constantly. Since this murder took place, not one single landlord and wife have lived in the pub and not ended up either in a premature death or, more commonly, divorce. The brewery chain that owns the pub now refuses to rent it out to couples because of this. Shortly after leaving the pub, my friend came to my house, which is a large converted guild hall in a very rural area. The house has an old part that dates back to the 1400s and a newer section from the 1600s. It's situated next to the local church, which was built at about 1200. Although I've never experienced anything, my friend said that she felt someone watching her in her bedroom. She felt that she was never alone in that room. She didn't feel this in any other room in the house. It's interesting to note that when she moved rooms so that my parents could renovate the roof and ceiling in the room that she had been using, the whole roof and ceiling collapsed. It was only held up by 3 nails. I don't know why she felt the way she did. I have never known the history of this house. I myself have also never been subject to anything that might be described as strange or outside the normal in this house or any other. But I believe her. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Bye.